Okay, this lesson is over finding the percent when given the part. Okay, so our first example is 20 is blank percent of 80. 20 is what percent of 80? An example would be if you were to go to the store and you found a pair of jeans that you liked and they cost $80, and the sales lady told you, oh, they're $20 off today, and you think to yourself, what percent is that? Maybe you found out that another store is having a percent off sale and you want to compare them to see which one is the better deal. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to label what we know. There are three parts to a percent problem. There's the part, there is the whole amount, and then there is the percent. From our problem, what are we given? What information are we given? Well, 20 is some percent, some part of 80. That 20 is your part. This of 80, of is your clue word. It tells you of 80, it tells you that that 80 is going to be your whole number. It's going to be your total amount. And then the percent is unknown. It's what we're trying to find. So now that we know we have the three parts labeled from the information we were given, we can go ahead and start modeling the solution. Some of these you can do in your head, and that's wonderful, but this lesson is on modeling. You have to be able to model these. So on your notes, on the first blank bar that you have, go ahead and write down this problem. This will be for the first bar. You're going to write down either above it or below it. You're going to write down 20 is blank percent of 80. And then as we go through the steps, you're going to need to write the steps. If you look at the bottom of your notes page, it's blank. There's some blank space down there. That's where you can write these steps. And there are 4 steps, so you want to write kind of small. Pause the video whenever needed so that you can write down all of the steps. Okay, the first thing you want to do, the first step, is to draw and label your bar model. Okay, so there's my bar model. It's just a rectangular bar, kind of like a fraction bar. You want to label the percent from 0% to 100%. You can label it on the top of the bar or on the bottom. That makes no difference. In this case, it's already labeled on the top for me. And then I'm going to label the amount. So this is my percent line, and this is going to be my amount. If there's 0%, then how much are you going to have? Well, 0. And 100% means you have the whole amount. And in this case, our whole is 80. So we'll put 80. We'll label it with 80. Make sure you're doing this on your model as well. Step number 2. You're going to write the part to whole fraction and simplify. Okay, we've already decided what our part is, what our whole is. We need to go ahead and write it as a fraction. Part to whole, because that is what a fraction is. So it's going to be 20 over 80. We want to simplify. So shortcut, they both end in a 0, so I can cross out the zeros, which leaves me 2/8, and I can simplify that further by dividing by 2, and it gives me 1/4. Step number 3, you want to model the simplified fraction on the bar model. So we've done this, you've been doing this since elementary school, modeling on fraction bars. 1/4. That means you want to cut your bar into 4 equal pieces, and you're going to shade one of them. The numerator is 1, so you're going to shade one of them. So when you look at your fraction bar, at your bar model, you see a model that represents 1/4. And the last step is you're going to divide the 100% into the same equal parts as the model. So you're going to take the 100%, we divided our model into 4 equal parts, so we're going to divide the 100% into 4 equal parts. And you get 25%. So each part is worth 25%. So label it 25%, 50%, 75%, and the 100% is already there. Now you just go back and you look to see the percent that is shaded. Well, I only have one little square shaded, one part shaded, so that's 25%. So 20 is 25% of 80. That's our answer. Pause the video if you need to so that you can go ahead and complete your example. Okay, example 2. 24 is blank percent of 60. First thing you want to do is label what you know. We know the part, the whole, and the percent. Okay, our clue word for the whole is of 60. That tells us 60 is our whole. Our part is the 24, and we're looking for the percent. That is our unknown. Okay, bar model should be labeled. This is step 1. Draw your bar model and label. We have the percents from 0 to 100%. We have when 0% means that there's a zero amount, 100% means the whole, which in this example is 60. And we're ready to move on to step 2. You should be doing this on your notes. This is problem number 2 or bar model number 2 on your notes. Okay, step 2. You want to write the part to whole fraction and simplify. So our part is 24, our whole is 60. We want to simplify. There are numerous factors, common factors that you can divide by. I'm going to go with 12. 24 divided by 12 is 2. 60 divided by 12 is 5. 2/5 is my fraction. Now I need to, step 3, model 2/5 on my fraction bar. So I'm going to cut my bar up into 5 equal pieces, 5 equal parts. We'll pretend that they're nice and equal. And how many of them do I want to shade? I want to shade 2 because that's my denominator, or I'm sorry, that's my numerator is 2. So I'm going to shade 2 of them. So here's one part and here is 2 parts. Now when you look at this bar, it looks like 2/5. Step 4 is to divide your 100% into equal parts, into the same equal parts. So I'm taking my 100%, my model is divided into 5 equal parts, so I'm going to divide that into 5, and I get 20%. That means that every part is worth 20%, so I want to label it 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%. Then to find my percent, I look at the amount shaded. I see what percent has been shaded. Well, 2 full parts have been shaded, and that is 40%. So our answer, 24, is 40% of 60. Again, pause the video if needed so that you can catch up and finish the example. Okay, this one is going to be example number 3. This one's a little bit more tricky. When you look at it, you see that there's a decimal, and some of you may go, uh-oh, but don't be scared of the decimal. You're still going to follow the same steps. Let's go ahead and list everything. What is our part? What is our whole? What is our percent? Well, clue word is of. Of 75 is your whole. 22 and 5/10 is going to be your part. And again, we're looking for our percent. It's good that you write down part, whole, percent, and what you're given, what information you're given in the problem, because you're going to get to where all these problems here are finding the percent, but you're going to have them all mixed up, and you're going to have to determine which one you're solving for, because what you're solving for determines how you solve it, what steps you use, or if you, when you start learning the proportions, what proportion you set up. So it's very important to identify what you know, to identify these 3 parts and what you're missing. Okay, set up our model, our 0%, 100%, the 0% amount is 0, and our whole is 75. So we can move on to step 2, write a part to whole fraction and simplify. Write your fraction. The part is 22 and 5/10. The whole is 75. It's okay for you to have a decimal in your fraction. That's okay. Remember, complex fractions, I had a fraction inside of a fraction over a fraction. That's okay. We're still going to do the same thing. We're still going to simplify. use your divisibility rules. Both of these numbers end in a 5, so I know I can divide by 5. We know how to divide by divide a decimal number. When we divide by 5 here, we get 4 5/10, and we get 15 in the denominator. I can still continue dividing. I can divide by 5 again, but I'm actually going to divide by 3. And I get, if I divide by 5, I would get 3 in the denominator, and that's a little tricky, so I can also divide by 3 and get 5, and that's easier to work with. So when I divide by 3, I get 1 5/10 as the numerator, and my denominator is 5. So this is the fraction that I want to model. I want to cut it up into 5 equal parts. That's what the denominator tells me to do. And I want to shade 1 5/10, or 1 1/2 parts. So I'm going to shade 1 whole part, and then I want to shade half of another part. So I'm just going to shade half of this. Pretend that's half. Okay, now I've modeled my fraction. The next thing I want to do, step 4, is to divide the 100% by the same number of parts. How many parts do we cut our model up into? 5. So we cut it up and divide it by 5, and we get 20%. Each part is worth 20%. So I'm going to go label my percents: 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, and the 100's already there. Now what percent is shaded? Well, I have 20% shaded, and then I have halfway between 20 and 30%. And what is halfway between 20 and 30? I'm sorry, halfway between 20 and 40%? 30%. So 22 5/10 is 30% of 75. So even though we had a decimal in our numerator, we were still able to find our percent. Okay, example number 4. 12 is what percent of 36? 12 is what percent of 36? Write what you know. What is your part? What is your whole? What is the percent? Well, my clue word for my whole is of 36. So that is my whole. My part is 12, and we're looking for the percent. Now, set up our model. It's actually already set up for us. Our 100% amount, our total amount, is 36. And now we're ready. We can write our fraction, a part to whole fraction, part to whole, 12 to 36. Simplify it. I can divide both numerator and denominator by 12, and I get 1/3. So cut your fraction bar up into thirds. We're going to shade 1. So when you look at this model, you should see 1/3. And if you'll recall, 1/3 is a special percent. It has a special percent. It's one of those ones that you just kind of have to memorize. It's the 3's repeating. So it's 33.3, put your repeat bar above it, percent. So 33.3 repeating percent. And 2/3, we'll just double it. Instead of the 3's repeating, double the 3's and you get 6's. It's the 6's repeating. Don't forget your repeat bar. And our answer is going to be the percent that represents the shaded amount. So the answer is 33.3 repeating percent. 33 3/10 repeating percent, or 33 1/3%. Okay, video check. You're going to work this problem on your own. You're going to do it on an index card or a sheet of paper. Turn it in when you're done. This shows that you watched the video. Make sure as you do it that you're talking to yourself, just like we did on the examples. Talk yourself through the steps. Say, okay, step 1, I need to do this, and then do it. Step 2, I need to do this, and then do it, and so on. Also, make sure that you're labeling your part amount, your whole amount, and your percent amount if you know it. In this case, you don't. It's unknown. This is what you're solving for. You're going to draw your bar model. Make sure you're modeling the solution just like we did on our examples. Again, once you're done, you'll turn this in. Pause the video so that you can solve it. There is one more problem to do after this one, so you'll want to come back and we'll do a homework problem. Okay, this is one of your homework problems. This is number 4 on your homework, and it is 11 is blank percent of 220 files. 11 files is how much percent of 220. You're going to follow all the same steps. What is your part? Your part is 11. What is your whole? Of 220. So your whole is 220. And we're looking for the percent. That is the unknown. Set up your bar model. The 100% whole amount is the 220. Step 2, you're going to write a part to whole fraction and simplify. Well, we've got it written here, part to whole. We can simplify by dividing by 11. And we get 1/20. Now, we normally don't split our fraction up into 20ths because that is a lot. So I'm going to start it. I don't think we'll need to do the whole thing because we only want 1/20th. But if I were to split it up, okay, that's into tenths, and then I divide each 10 into half. And that will give me 20. And I'm going to shade just one because I'm only looking for 1/20th. So I've modeled 1/20th. The next step is to divide the 100% by the number of parts. We divided our part into 20, or our model into 20 parts, so we're going to divide by 20, and we're going to get 5. So each part is worth 5%. So there's 5%, 10%, 15%, and so on. Our answer is the percent of the amount that's shaded. Well, the amount shaded is just one part, which is 5%. So 11 is 5% of 220. Okay, go ahead and complete your homework and turn in when finished.